afternoon. We are going to start the panel discussion about bioliteracy for the 21st century, empowering citizens with information technologies to cope with the challenges of biodiversity conservation. I'm very honored and pleased to have with me as panel members Natalia Zamora, to my left, Manuel Vargas, Miguel Fuentes, and Álvaro Cubero. I have contacted them and provided them with the following guidelines. We have 4 questions which I expected them, or I suggested to them that we use them as background material for their presentations. So this is the general structure of the presentations that they will be giving. They will each have 15 minutes to present their experiences and their points of view. And I have also asked them to focus on the last 2 issues. How are ICTs being used to address those challenges? And if you have examples of good practices. I know they do. That's why they were picked to be part of this discussion. And the other key question is, what is next in the application of information and communication technologies for bioliteracy activities? I'm not going to read these questions, the A, B, C, and D, because you will be hearing about them in their respective presentations. I would like to say, however, that this is a very relevant issue. Bioliteracy is the name bioalfabetización in Spanish, coined here by Rodrigo Gámez, the former director and founding director of the National Biodiversity Institute of Costa Rica, to differentiate it a bit from the concept of environmental education, which is more comprehensive. This one focuses on education for biodiversity conservation. You know that nature includes more than living nature. It includes rivers, and it includes other types of conditions and entities aside from biodiversity. But more and more, as I have visited and come to understand how different organizations work, I see that after a few months, after they are created, or after a few years, or maybe later in their development, I'm talking about institutions such as research institutions, museums, ministries of the environment, national park systems. They, of course, all come to the conclusion that, yes, it is very important to enforce law and to conceive good laws. Yes, it is very important for scientists to generate the valuable knowledge and information that is needed to conserve biodiversity. And yes, it's also very important for computer scientists to get involved and provide the technical framework to do this work that could lead us to conserving biodiversity. But all of them get to the conclusion, sooner or later, that it is really the people, the citizen, who has to really embrace the conservation cause. And therefore, raising awareness about the value of biodiversity, which is the main goal of bioliteracy, becomes key. That's why museums, herbaria, research centers always have an educational program. And in fact, museums are, in a way, when you go to a museum, you become aware of the beauty and all the dimensions that I mentioned in my first talk on Monday of biodiversity. It's one way of reaching out to the general public and making sure that at least they would be more willing to do the sacrifices one has to do for things that you love when you become aware of their value. Natalia Zamora is going to be our first presenter. I will read the CVs of all 4 members. They will have the 15-minute presentations, and then we have about 20 minutes to ask questions about their presentations at the very end. So I will present a brief profile of our colleagues. Natalia holds a PhD in environmental education of the Universidad Autónoma de Madrid in Spain, and a master's in environmental education and communication sciences of the College of Forest, Wildlife, and Range Sciences, Resource, Recreation, and Tourism at the University of Idaho in the US. And she also has a bachelor's degree in collective communication sciences from the University of Costa Rica. Natalia she was my colleague for more than 20 years in different positions at the National Biodiversity Institute of Costa Rica. She is part of the capacity building task force of the Intergovernmental Platform of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, IPBES. Currently, Natalia works as the Director of Education for the National Program of Educational Informatics at the Omar Dengo Foundation. Álvaro, the far left, was born in 1991 in beautiful Punta Arenas, Costa Rica. He graduated as an audiovisual producer and as a nature tourism guide at the National Biodiversity Institute of Costa Rica. He was one of the TEDx 2016 speakers and has given several conferences in Spain, Costa Rica, and other countries about biodiversity photography. Álvaro currently works as a wildlife photographer and a photography tour leader in Costa Rica and other countries. Miguel, to the right of Álvaro, is a disruptive innovator. That's quite a task. He currently serves as a regional director of Ecology Project International, an organization dedicated to the promotion of science education and conservation with adolescents in 5 countries of America. Miguel he has a very eclectic, interesting background. He studied international relations and systems engineering and holds a master's in project management and an MBA. In 2006, he founded the first digital government portal, I remember that, operated by civil society in Latin America. For 2 years, it remained the most visited site for searching online public services until it was transferred to the government of Costa Rica. He served as an advisor to President on issues of digital government and is a member of the High Technology Advisory Committee and is a member of the Commission on Education and Communication of IUCN. Miguel has 20 years of experience in organizations linked to education, first focusing on the promotion of technologies in education and then focusing on the development of skills that allow young people to analyze complex problems related to conservation and sustainable development with the aim of changing their behaviors and creating innovative solutions to global problems. Manuel Vargas is a computer scientist specialized in biodiversity informatics and geographic information systems. He holds a master's in computer science from the University of Costa Rica and has worked since 1997 at the National Biodiversity Institute, INBio, as developer of biodiversity informatics applications, data manager, data analyst, and associated researcher. He has participated in several global biodiversity informatics initiatives, including the Global Biodiversity Information Facility, GBIF, of which we have heard, as node manager of the Costa Rican node and as the vice chair, global vice chair of the Global Nodes Committee. He also has worked as a professor in the computer science master's program at the University of Costa Rica and the Geographic Information Systems and Remote Sensing master's program also at the University of Costa Rica and the National University. We have a mixed group of people who themselves are very interdisciplinary, which is quite important to have in a discussion like this where we are talking about bioliteracy, but bioliteracy with an informatics component. I would like to offer Natalia Zamora the opportunity to take the floor and have the next 15 minutes, Natalia.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, the audience, for being here at this time of the afternoon, last afternoon of the week. I am holding several hats. As Eric mentioned, I worked for 20 years for the National Biodiversity Institute, but now I am working at the Omar Dengo Foundation. I would like to talk to the gentleman later on that raised the question about the schools and how to get girls involved in computational thinking. We can speak about that later. But right now I'm going to focus on bioliteracy and how we can empower citizenship with ICTs. To the question of what are the main obstacles, challenges to raise awareness about the value of biodiversity, I would like to start saying the main obstacle, I think, is the lack of knowledge about biodiversity. And when I speak about biodiversity, I want to emphasize I'm speaking about genes, species, and ecosystems. So having that clear, I think that the lack of knowledge about biodiversity and about the link that biodiversity has with resources humanity needs is very important. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about services: water, air, soil, and many other services that biodiversity provides humanity with. And also the lack of understanding that us, humans in this world, whom we only are one more species, we depend on those services every day. For example, if you ask the question, what are bees providing when they pollinate crops to humans, and you ask the questions, what will happen to the world without bees, then it will be an increase in fruit prices. Because then, when you're harvesting, before that, you're going to have to do human pollination. So those bees are serving humanity with a service, pollination. That's what I'm talking about here. So the lack of knowledge and a real understanding that biodiversity provides humanity with a lot of services that we need every day is something that is a challenge. But more than awareness, it should be a matter of action. I think, Erick said I have my PhD in environmental education, and I think one of the main, I would say, flaws of environmental education for the past 30-something years is that it's been focusing mainly in awareness and not taking a step further to action. So more than awareness, it should be a matter of action. A lot has been done already to raise awareness. We have many societies around the world that are very keen on being environmentally friendly, but then when you really have to do something yourself and change your lifestyle to be a little bit more environmentally friendly then you probably think more about it and stop doing the action you were going to do to be friendly to the environment. Think about recycling, for example. If you recycle it, and then going further on from biodiversity, but talking more about environmentally, if you recycle at home, but then when they pick up the garbage, they mix everything together, what's the point in doing so? But if you have to bring that recycling separate to a center, then you have to do something else in your to-do list, and that's taking a step further. So I think we need to move from intentions and attitudes to change of behaviors and actions. And also, it's very easy to blame somebody else and to think that somebody else needs to take charge in the problem. So we are all part of the problem or part of the solution. And when you start thinking that it's the government that should take care of that, or it should be the NGOs that should take care of that, then we're in trouble. And this is a little bit of what's happening around the world still. To answer the question if we need to drastically change current formal education paradigms in order to address these biodiversity conservation challenges, on Monday we were in another room here talking about, with Valentina and other people here, about education. And I truly believe we need to change current formal education paradigms. What we learn and how we learn that. And not only to address biodiversity conservation challenges, but to develop in our students 21st skills that are necessary for these people to be active citizens in today's and tomorrow's societies. This is something we need to change our education systems and what we're learning within the classroom and how we learn it. And more than objectives, more than content, more than subjects, we should be learning about developing competencies and skills in our students. When I speak about 21st century skills, I'm talking about problem solving, collaborating, critical thinking, and many more. Biodiversity conservation should be a formal, non-formal, and informal endeavor. And when I speak about formal, I'm talking about what we carry out within the official system of the Ministry of Public Education in every country, what happens within the classroom. When I speak about non-formal, is what happens as an audience that goes to a zoo or a science center or a biodiversity park. When you become a tourist, when you're part of a ecotourism tour somewhere in the world. And when I'm talking about informal, I'm speaking more about the media, the information that is there, the information about biodiversity that we get on the radio, on the web, on apps, and technology plays a big part on the three of those. And all sectors of society should be involved. I mentioned before that it's a matter of everybody being involved, and so I think the government should provide policy and legal framework that enforces biodiversity conservation, and the government should also enable the system so that the citizens can act according to the awareness they already have, because it's a matter of taking action more than awareness. So I think that this is the main role of governments. NGOs and media should continue promoting awareness, informing and educating about the value of biodiversity. And when I speak about the value of biodiversity, it's understanding why biodiversity is really important to humanity. And private companies should be concentrating on clean production, not what is making more money for them, but what is really being responsible with the planet. Not only compensating for negative impact, but mitigating that impact when you're producing. And we can speak about that for hours. I want to be really brief on this one. I think education is complementary to all those topics and many more. And it's necessary to have all of those on the table, but they're competing for funds, and that's something that is real. Now, concentrating more about how ICTs are being used to address those challenges, and if we have examples on those, I think ICTs are playing an important role in building and sharing knowledge on biodiversity to understand the sustainable uses and ecosystem services that are essential to life on Earth. And some of those examples are biomonitoring, citizen science, crowdsourcing, and apps. And I'm going to give you an example on biomonitoring with the GLOW program. This GLOW program that states for Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment program is an international science education program that provides students and the public worldwide with the opportunity to participate. So we have, and it's along in more than 100 countries around the world. Students, in the case of Costa Rica, participate collecting data and contributing to the understanding of how rivers function, specifically in our country, and I'll get to that soon. It's a joint program between NASA and the National Science Foundation and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and Department of State of the United States. Since 2002, we're carrying it out at the Fundación Omar Dengo here in Costa Rica, jointly with the Ministry of Public Education. This project is developed as a science club within the informatics class. the teacher that is currently within the school hours teaching educational informatics is working together here with the science teacher or the social studies teacher. And the students are working in scientific research on hydrology, as I mentioned before, supported by specialized technology and environmental data loggers, digital sensors for environmental monitoring. And they can measure temperature, pH, they can measure dissolved oxygen in water, and they're also using microscopes and stereoscopes to learn more about aquatic invertebrates. Along the scientific research, these students are working in globe learning activities supported by technology. For example, they use specialized databases. They consult the globe database. They're creating their own blogs, wikis, or web pages. So they're somehow biomonitoring the quality of water that they have in their communities and bringing that information within the database, having more knowledge about what's happening with the biodiversity and the rivers that are around. So this is an example of biomonitoring I wanted to share with you. Speaking more about citizen science and crowdsourcing, I have several initiatives like Project NOAA, which is a tool to explore and document wildlife. It's promoting citizen science around the world, and like this one, there's several more, like for example, iSpot. iSpot is now being used in South Africa and in England, and it's a friendly and free community where any citizen can contribute to. Atlas of Living Australia, and I'm sure Manuel can talk more about this, but in parallel to the scientific work, citizens from Australia can contribute with their information about biodiversity. And this is another citizen science project that, as you see here, they can join with their own projects. Eric mentioned this a couple of times Monday and today about iNaturalist, so I won't get into detail on this one, but you can, through iNaturalist, which is providing a lot of information, can explore and share your own observations of the natural world. And also the contribution of apps. And here I just searched for some. You can learn a lot about birds, if you're a bird watcher, using several apps. And like this, trees. Eric talked earlier about how you can identify leaves, and I'm not getting into that taxonomic, staying more into the citizen science part of it. And tweet, you see first here on the right-hand side, the most colorful one, from the National Biodiversity Institute and ICE, Colby, which is the phone company and electric company here in Costa Rica. And it's part of that, but I think Manuel can address that in more detail. And so I think what's next in the application of ICTs for bioliteracy activities, I think more understanding of biodiversity and its sustainable uses. I would like to quote here a phrase by Baba Diom from Senegal. And he says that we will only conserve what we love. We would only love what we understand, and we will only understand what we have been taught. I think there's some words into that. I think more biomonitoring needs to be in place, more citizen science and crowdsourcing, more apps, definitely the use of drones and cameras for scientific research, for example. And as a transversal point, I think is the collaboration and making this contribution with your information to something that is built collectively to be more significant, personal, and definitely the meaningful learning needs to be in place. And I will stop there.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I want to ask Manuel Vargas to please give us his presentation.
Thank you, Eric, for the invitation and for the introduction. Well, the title of my presentation is Bioliteracy at INBio, ICTs to promote awareness of the value of biodiversity in the Costa Rican society. I am not going to address all the questions one by one, but I will try to talk a little bit about each one and present some interesting experience that we have had at INBio about this. Well, a short agenda I am going to present. I am going to tell you a little bit about INBio, also about the process of generation of biodiversity data and information, ICTs developed or customized to share data and information for bioliteracy that we have developed or customized in INBio. And finally, some lessons that we have learned and some challenges that are ahead. Well, about INBio. INBio is a NGO, a non-government, non-profit organization. Its headquarters are located in Santa Rosa, Santo Domingo de Heredia, very close to the capital city. It was created in 1989 by a group of members of the civil society and was declared a national public interest institution in 2006. INBio works very close in collaboration with government, universities, private sector, and also many organizations outside Costa Rica. Its mission is to promote a greater awareness of the value of biodiversity as a means to ensure its conservation and improve the quality of life of human beings. Well, INBio does a lot of things, but this graphic presents very synthetically what it does. All begins at the fields, as you can see at my right side. People go to the protected areas, some other places to collect samples of insects, plants, fungi, and other forms of life. And all those samples and their related information is input into biodiversity informatics applications that fit some active institutional processes. For example, well, I don't have time to cover all of them, but you can see mentioned here, for example, the bioprospecting activities. This is about finding useful, sustainable uses for biodiversity, biodiversity management section. This is about managing plants for protected areas, for example, and assessing of ecosystem services. The Bioliteracy program, I am going to talk you more about this, and there are some others. Well, let's go back to the fields and what we call the generation of primary biodiversity records, PBR. Those are records that contain data elements about the name of the species or higher taxonomy, genus, family, their location, hopefully geographic coordinates, and the time they were recorded. So, some people go to the fields. These co-workers are called parataxonomists. Those are people who live near protected areas and have been trained in the science of classifying organisms. So, those co-workers bring those specimens to the laboratories where they are identified, and those data are entered in computer systems. Many of those specimens have been shared with National Museum, for example, and some national universities, and also international collaborators. Well, you can see here a map with an example of primary biodiversity data. You can see, for example, the name of the species, who collected the species, the names of the collector, and when did this happen. INBio has collected, as you can see, 3 million of those records. Those represent about 30,000 species, and that is about 30% of non-Costa Rican species. 3.7 thousand of those are new to science. If you put all those data with the rest of the data that are available from other institutions. For example, I am presenting here all the records that you can find in the Global Biodiversity Information Facility about Costa Rica. That is the ultimate resource for finding primary biodiversity data. You can see much more data, in this case 6.2 million data. I always say when I present this map that I am not sure how many things can you do with this, but I can tell you that compared to another countries, it is a lot of data. For example, Costa Rica is the main provider, the second main provider of Latin America in this resource. Only Brazil is bringing more data than we. And if you compare the size of Brazil and the size of Costa Rica, you can see that we have some information, a lot of information that we can use. Of course, you can see some biases and some gaps, for example, in the region of Talamanca or in the northern section of the country, and there are some other biases that are not so easy to see right here. For example, most of this information comes from insects and plants, and some other important groups like mammals, vertebrates in general, are not so well represented. That is very uncommon compared to other countries, but right now this is our situation. Well, if you have those primary biodiversity records, you can start to build some blocks of more detailed, more general information. For example, at ecosystem level or species level. In this case, for example, we have a species page about the Ateles geoffroyi. This is one of the monkeys of our country, and you can find here information about natural history, its conservation status, multimedia, literature, interactive maps. In INVIO, we have produced about 4,000 of these species pages that are available at internet. And you can continue building these blocks of information and knowledge. We have produced, for example, a lot of books and instructional materials about biodiversity. We have been collaborating for many years with scientists from other countries, from 42 countries. And also written a lot of scientific papers, more than 2,000, as you can see. Well, so we have some data and some information in scientific formats, and we need to transfer all this knowledge and all this information to society. This is why the Bioliteracy program was conceived. Natalia here directed this program for many years, so she can tell you better about it, but I can tell you some generalities. This program was about training in biodiversity management, for example, for teachers, for tourist guides, for entrepreneurs, about all the visitors to INVIO Parque that now belongs to the Ministry of Environment. More than 1 million persons visited it. And some examples of activities are the virtual communities for learning, workshops, citizen science activities, books, field guides, ecotourism, and those that I already mentioned. Well, to talk in more detail about some of the activities that we have developed, we have this nice example. It is called Cyber Hives, Cibercolmenas, in Spanish. It is about virtual learning communities about biodiversity. Students from primary schools and secondary, I think also, were selected or were trained by the specialists at INVIO in the natural history of some taxonomic groups, for example, plants or insects, mammals, any other, and they put information, questions, multimedia, all of that in a virtual community accessible through the web. So you can see here, this activity involves tasks as the fields and also in the classroom. Another interesting activity in which we have been involved is what we call BioBlitz. This is an intense surveying effort, typically is 24 hours long, so we can cover day and night, and it's about record biodiversity in a designated area. Citizen sciences participate under the guidance of experts. They explain the participants, the experts, about any taxonomic group, and the participants enter the information in a computer application, so the information can be available on internet. Very important for running all these activities has been for us the concept of open data. Okay. All INVIO data and information are shared according to open data licenses. For example, primary data records are in the public domain. This is what we call CC0, Creative Commons 0. Species pages and related content are shared according to other Creative Commons licenses. For example, Creative Commons by attribution, non-commercial share alike. And this allows free sharing of this data and information for many purposes, including sharing the information with global biodiversity initiatives, for example, the GBIF that I already mentioned, the Encyclopedia of Life, and many others by means of globally accepted standards in which we have participated to develop also. Well, some other examples of application, well, this is the iNaturalist. iNaturalist, as Natalia and Erick have mentioned, is a software for reporting personal biodiversity information. This is free software. And we can download the code and modify it and build a customization made by INVIO and use in BioBlitz and other events. It's a very nice resource, and they have the observations have the particularity that are very rich in multimedia. Well, this is a map of all the records that have been collected in Costa Rica with this application. So you can feel, I don't remember the number exactly, but you can see how the map of the country is feeling nicely. Tweet application, also mentioned by Natalia. We did this in collaboration with Colby. It's a mobile application with information for about 500 species. It contains general info, multimedia, also a feature for geolocation, so you can use your cell phone, for example, and walk around the surroundings and see what species have been seen in that area. It is available for Android and iPhone versions. And finally, I want to talk to you about the Atlas of Living Costa Rica. Okay. This is a web portal and aggregator of all the data, or many of the types of the data that I have mentioned. It is based on the Atlas of Living Australia that Natalia mentioned. So this is, again, free software, and it is based on the open data concept, so we can use the code, and according to standards, reutilize the code. It contains information about occurrences, species page, literature, multimedia, and we have been planning a specialist interface for mobile application and citizen science. Okay. There are some screenshots about this. Well, what have we learned and what challenges are ahead? We have seen that there are some data and some information available about Costa Rican biodiversity. Definitely, we need more, but we have the feeling, me and my coworkers at INVIO, that we are not still using very well what we have gathered so far. Very important, it is not always in the formats required for citizenship. We have found also that open data standards and free software facilitate enormously the sharing of biodiversity information and knowledge with society, as well as the development of IT tools. So we can produce state-of-the-art software applications for bioliteracy. And finally, ICTs need to be definitely complemented with live experiences and personal contact with experts. So those are some of the lessons that we have learned and challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Miguel, please.
Sorry. It was interesting hearing Natalia talking about the importance of knowledge about the awareness of biodiversity. when I was first interviewed for my current job, I had not consistent knowledge about ecology. I actually worked for technology and education for almost 15 years. So when they told me, what do you do for the environment? I was like, well, whatever my wife says, you know. It wasn't that of a big issue for me. So I had that lack of knowledge. And, you know, for me, conservation was something like this. You know, this is something that is relevant for pandas, not really relevant for me, you know. So one of the things that I think that will be important to answer that question is, what's in it for me? What services the nature gives me? And making that connection is very important. And you can see those two photos there, and we can try to make that connection. You know, what will happen if the polar bears are not here? What will happen if the leatherbacks, sea turtles, are not here? And of course, with polar bears, Coca-Cola will need to come up with something else, right? But with leatherbacks, and my program works with leatherbacks, and when we ask that question to students, to high school students, most of the time they just say, well, maybe we'll not be able to eat more eggs or meat. And that's really interesting in the sense that, you know, when we come back to them and tell them, well, do you realize if that the leatherback turtles are not here, you actually will not be able to, sorry, to get the time. We actually will not be able to, they will not be eating jellyfish, and those jellyfish will be actually increasing numbers, and then will not be able to swim on the sea. And some of the species of fish that we actually eat the eggs are going to be eaten by those jellyfish that are, you know, being more prosperous because of the lack of sea turtles. So they see the cycle, they see the connection, and then it's easier for us to sell the concept of why it is important to have a world that is biodiverse. And the other thing, you know, that connection is really important, but the other connection that is really important is the physical connection to nature. And I have that question for you, and well, sorry, the question is, what was the last time that you did that? And can I have raise hands for A, yesterday? Okay, you were here, but there's some nature around. What about B, last week? Okay. What about C? I don't remember. Well, you know, it's the relevance and the connection of being in nature has been proved by many research. One of the ones that I remember the most is one from Stanford that says that if you stay in nature, if you walk within the nature for at least 60 minutes, parts of your brain that lead you to think about yourself actually shut down. And that's huge. And they also prove that just by looking at photos of nature had some positive effect, while not the same. So just by looking at that, you're actually improving your life. Making that connection is really important. And for me, seeing this graph, it's sort of seeing the dashboard of my car and seeing the check engine. You know, like, okay, check engine, go to the garage, to make some repairs. When you see there, those are sort of the limits of our war. And you see there that biodiversity loss is way, way on red. So it's check engine. Do something, right? And we're not doing anything, or not doing a lot. And this has to do with that graph as well. How many years did it take to support humanity? We're actually living in borrowed resources right now. So that's very important for us to connect with that. Do we need to change education paradigms? I don't know. Which school classroom do you think is 30 years back, and which one is sort of current? I mean, probably the clothes give it away, but the methodology is pretty much the same. So if you, to answer that question in a short, sure, but it's not because of biodiversity. It's actually because of humanity survival. If we continue to have a paradigm of education that just reinforces memory and memoristic skills, then we're not getting there for what Natalia was saying, you know, the building of competencies that are needed for the 21st century to be competitive in that. And that's because we have a lot of information. So why the need of memory? We have a lot of information. We just need students to can take that information and do something about that, be creative with information. What's the role of government and NGOs and companies? For me, it's, as Natalia said as well, it's, the government is obviously about policies and about doing something with the innovation that someone else gives them. For me, NGOs are always ahead of the curve. You know, NGOs are not restrained by government money, are not restrained by the system, so they're always ahead of the curve. You know, what INBio was doing is because they're an NGO, because they were not restrained by government limitations. So innovation is the role for NGOs for me. Companies, I will say that companies go both ways. Companies need to put more effort into hiring people that are more environmentally friendly, but also what is happening right now is that the current generation of millennials is actually wanting to work for companies that are more environmentally friendly. So the pressure is on both sides. And as media, as Natalia said as well, media needs to work on make those connections, that connection of the importance of biodiversity more apparent to anyone else. Does education, well, that question, for me, it's a matter of how we understand bioliteracy and how we, and I will, you know, we are proposing to sort of not move away, but to increase the scope of what bioliteracy is and actually talk about more about our environmental literacy, which is a concept that was, that is used by the North American Association of Environmental Education, and it's basically those four things. You know, work on the students' knowledge, ecological knowledge, work on the dispositions and awareness and those sentiments, those feelings about nature, but also building competencies, and at the end, without those three ingredients, to expect and promote more environmental positive behaviors. So, in order to do that, we need to move away from just talking about awareness and talking more about how an ecological knowledge core should look like in the sense of those things. Please don't try to read the boxes, but at least the big titles, you know, it's coming from the very basic of understanding the interdependency of ecosystems to more the dynamics, and ending by talking about the human impacts. So climate change, energy crisis, all those topics will go, you know, along the progression of ecological knowledge. How are ICTs being used to address those challenges? When I got to this question, I sort of step away and say, well, Erick is probably just asking me to tell all the wonderful stuff that he did when he was at INBio. But it is, you know, it's when they think about access to knowledge, INBio in Costa Rica has been monumentally important, with species homepages, with connections to international organizations such as iNaturalist, with the Encyclopedia of Life, which Erick also led some time ago. It's been a leading country because of it has a leading institution. So I cannot think of any other example of access of knowledge other than INBio, to be honest with you. Collaboration and building community regarding biodiversity, we also have the example of cyber hives. And actually, my organization is CPI, And we had a program, a mentorship program that is pretty much based, I would say based loosely for copyright efforts, but based loosely on the cyber communities, cyber hives model. And we're actually also using technology and information technologies to sort of replicate what has been done on the hackathon with several hackathons around the world. We're sort of bringing together students, high school students, and letting them work for 28 hours to come up with prototypes of hardware and software that can deal with issues or opportunities regarding the environment in their community. So that's one thing that we're doing. And on skills development, there's a lot of mobile apps that they have already pointed out. I will only point out that the ones that I wanted to show and somehow got lost in the way were apps that had to do more with how to challenge kids to think about and try to simulate environmental issues, and not so much of identification apps or things like that. So if you're interested in those apps, I can share the link, a couple of links with you afterwards. What's next in the application of ICTs? I have just one word, engagement. How am I doing? Engagement. I'm okay. And regarding engagement, it's the opportunity to really come up with ways of immerse people and be more engaged with biodiversity. So I have, for example, early education. We have now storybooks. And those storybooks can get a little boring, well, at least for me. I have a 5-year-old, so I do get a little bored of reading and reading and reading the same book. But if we start seeing things like this, it's this augmented reality through a device, whether that is an iPhone, an Apple, a tablet, or whatever, you can start finding several meanings and different meanings from the same book. And that's very rich for biodiversity education. I mean, like, really having, for the kid to have the opportunity to see a rhinoceros up close, that's huge. Collaboration. Well, one of the issues of collaboration, international collaboration, is language. And with Google Translate, with the new Skype translator, those issues are becoming less and less relevant. So that's one thing that the information technologies are really doing and will continue to do in the future. It's to erode those walls of that do not allow collaboration. We also have different repositories of data, of global data, such as the GLOW program that Natalia referenced. One thing that Natalia did not say is that there are like more than 30 protocols that you can do on the GLOW program. So imagine 30 protocols through more than 140 or 100 something countries. Imagine the data set. Imagine the richness of that data. And all that data is in the fingertips of our students. We have different platforms like Go3 that is about carbon dioxide, and World Water Monitoring Challenge that is about, of course, water quality. And we also have another on the horizon, and currently we have another set of applications that are more what you guys already have talked about, like Project NOAA, iNaturalist, LiveSnap, apps that will allow us to identify species and identify things and collaborate to global citizen science. But the really impressive things that are going to be in the horizon has to do with immersion and content creation. Imagine not only having the device looking at a rhinoceros, but instead of that, imagine your whole reality, the whole room on 360 to be on a rainforest, and you are here. we can start seeing that with HoloLenses. So that's going to be on the horizon, building more virtual reality that is immersive, building more mixed reality of having biodiversity that is probably like 3,000 miles away here, and you can be able to interact with that biodiversity as you were in the other place. And the other thing regarding immersion and content creation is something that is that Google is working on, and it's, as I say, they're only getting there. They're only beginning with this, and it's Google Expeditions, and it's a very neat platform. What you're seeing there, it's the students that have some sort of mobile device, and that mobile device can probably cost $30, $60, something like that, and then they have a cardboard, and the cardboard will cost probably $2 or $3 to make. And what you're seeing on the teacher's screen, there's a sort of a big circle. That's what the teacher is pointing out to the students. And then the little dots, the little white dots, are what the students are watching right now. And the great thing about that is that it's not only immersive, it's social. Because all of them are watching the same, all of them are there, and they can talk and interact as they were on that place. And that's something that we are actually exploring with EPI. We just found out this week that we were approved as a partner for this program, and we're going to be building content and imagery for this program, probably for Galapagos and Costa Rica, Mexico, and the Yellowstone in the US. So that's a very exciting program as well that is on the horizon. And imagine what we can do with that immersion technology, with HoloLenses, with augmented reality or virtual reality glasses and devices, what we can do with drones, what we can do with underwater ROVs, what we can do with 360 cameras that now are costing around $150 a basic model, or $300 at a more advanced model. So it's on the horizon. It's just around the corner. And it's very exciting that we are here, and that you guys from the ICT spectrum of things can take a look at the potential of doing things with ecological groups or with biodiversity groups, and doing some things that could be as important and as creative as those things that I have just shown. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Miguel. Álvaro, we would love to hear about your wildlife photographer experiences. We have to give Álvaro a few minutes before they set up his Mac computer.
Well, hello, and thanks for coming this afternoon. In a moment, I put down my presentation. Okay. Well, thank you for coming and learn about the technologies and this important new effort to make possible the biodiversity conservancy using the tools the information era bring to us. First, I want to apologize with you because my English is so basic, and sorry about it. But I think the idea that a good idea is important to share or to be shared, don't matter how. For me, it's very important to be here and explain a little bit of my work. First, my name is Álvaro Cubero Vega, and I am a wildlife and conservancy photographer. This is a very cool job, but difficult. But it give me a big satisfaction, being big moments in my life. I was blessed to born in a country with almost the 5% of the biodiversity of the world. I grew up in Punta Arenas. It's a central Pacific coast of Costa Rica. And I always was in the forest, learning and discovering about of Pachamama, or Mother Nature. And this is for I do my work. I started, as all the photographers start or begin, take photos or took photos to the little box and leaf and little tiny rocks and sticks, everything. Then I start to took photos to birds, like the chestnut-colored woodpecker, or the boat-billed heron, or lesser ground cuckoo on the right, or red-headed barbet. And I start to wonderful world is discovered by me and my camera. Obviously, the toucans, this is the Kill Bill toucan and Aracari toucan, and the impactful king vulture is one of the most beautiful vulture in the earth. I realize my work is about the images and feelings, and that is why I want to present you these photographs, and this is a little bit of my work. For me, it's very important you understand my labor. I want to present you a little bit. It's a fast slideshow, but sorry, I don't have so much time. And this video is very resume of my work. I hope you enjoy it.
Muy bendecido de nacer en Costa Rica, que tiene el 5% de la biodiversidad del mundo. Creo que aquí hay posibilidades infinitas, entonces en algún momento se llegan a acabar. En realidad, uno siempre encuentra algo nuevo: fotografía de naturaleza, fotografía de aves, después que anfibios, después que reptiles. Cuando crees que ya fotografiaste gran parte, te encontrás otro montón de mundos: el mundo de los hongos, y después te encontrás el mundo de los insectos. En la fotografía de naturaleza también encuentra uno muchas cosas que la gente los ve como suyas, paisajes de pueblos, se encuentra fotografía de los animales preferidos, de las personas, de las aves. Entonces las fotografías dejan de ser mías para pasar a ser de todos.
Okay, is this little bit of my work? So I researched about successful stories on the conservancy area. I am talking about Peter Dombrowskis. He's a very good photographer of German. Far, far away in Tasmania, the governor declared that the land around Franklin River only was a swamp without nature interest. But Mr. Dombrowskis knew it was a lie and raised his camera instead his voice, creating a wonderful photography essay showing that the area was a beautiful sanctuary of biodiversity. With this effort, he achieved the declaration of the Franklin Gordon Rivers National Park. These important photographies of Mr. Dombrowskis are incredible. And even before all these years, the images still are amazing and impactful. This is photos for Peter Dombrowskis. And another important example is the Island Girl project. Island Girl is a female peregrine falcon that was tagged with GPS system to follow its migratory route. The project is coordinated by Falcon Research Group. The GPS usually is capable to operate for 3 years. And that is why the Island Girl is very particular. The GPS has been operating for 6 years and throwing so many important data about its behavior and migratory routes. Today, it's possible to follow the migratory route of Island Girl on internet in real time. This is only the beginning of the new era of research with advanced technologies bring to us. This made me realize about the potential of photography and technologies together. I start to find some species endangered in Costa Rica, like the blue-side tree frog, this beautiful frog you see, and the resplendent quetzal, beautiful bird, one of the most beautiful birds on earth. In Costa Rica, we have the more high density of resplendent quetzal in the world. It's very beautiful. This is a female in the right and male to the left. Another species is the lemur tree frog, incredible species. For me, it was an important moment when I took photos to this margai. This margai is Tika. Tika is the name of informal way to call the Costa Rica woman. And Tika was rescued from illegal hunters. And Tika then start a very difficult adaptation with human and the human life. This wild cat appears regularly near to Arenal Volcano National Park. And thanks to the report of local people, we were able to find her, looking for food for her babies. According to the stories, Tika was rescued from illegal hunters. Then she started a very hard adaptation to the life with humans, but always in nature environment. At some point, Tika began to disappear for a few days, and then for a few months, and then Tika only appears once a year, casually when she had cubs and needed extra food. So far, it's known that Tika has had more than 4 pregnancy seasons. She is very severe with her cubs. When they grew up enough, she expelled them off her territory. Even when Tika has some of tolerance to human, took photos is not easy, especially because she is very fussy about her maternity. With a lot of patience, I was able to spend a few minutes with her and took some photos. Of course, today we have all this work in my social network like Facebook, Instagram, and communities like 500px or other communities. The photos is for all the world, all the people. The social networks are a very important windows to all the world. So many years ago, when you took a rare photo or you make a very big discovery, important, you had to wait to conference or in scientific meetings to show you results. But now you can pass, I can pass to the shot and to the worldwide exposition in a few minutes. I only upload my photo in Facebook and ready. The question is this good or is this bad? Well, it's a double-edged sword. It's very tricky in this moment. The last year, I have a very incredible experience with the three-walled bellbird. It's a very elusive bird, easy to hear in the cloud forest, but not to see. Even less to take an acceptable photo. One day, a very good friend who lived close to Monteverde told me about bellbirds vocalizing deep in the cloud forest. The major problem is the bellbirds, they perch very high in the top of the trees. But we were lucky, and it was very windy those days, so they were forced to come down near to the trail. I went to search these bellbirds with good friends and colleagues, and what happened for me is wonderful. And I want to show you this a small video about the moment we record these beautiful bellbirds.
Hay aventuras que al inicio nos dejan sin habla y luego nos dan demasiado que contar. En el magnífico bosque nuboso de Monteverde esperábamos encontrar una criatura espléndida, el pájaro campana, que con sus 3 barbas negras colgantes y un canto gutural añade un tono de misterio al bosque. Ese canto es practicado constantemente por los machos a lo largo de 7 años hasta alcanzar la perfección. Y nuestra paciencia fue recompensada con una magnífica escena. Un adulto con sus largas barbas instruyendo a un juvenil en el arte de la música. Es por eso que creemos que la aventura es la mejor manera de aprender.
This is beautiful, the three-walled bellbird. Huh? The next step in my work is the video, not only the photo. I use the YouTube. YouTube is a very good tool in this moment. Why? Well, I write some of YouTube. It's a leader platform with the 69% of the video consumers. According to studies, the Digital Future Comscore, the 74% of the internet traffic in 2070 will be consuming videos. For that reason, even if make a video is expensive, the material will be universal with a low cost of launch. This is important, and the question is, why is important to show to people our results and our audiovisual work? Well, I will tell you in one sentence. Nobody can preserve what they do know. It's not the same to show people the list of endangered species. It's very important, but it's not the same to show their photos and videos about its behavior, habitats, and interactions. It's make them real. My personal mission is to capture this life that I can see and touch now, but that will disappear if we do not do something. Thank you very much.
Well, I want to thank again our panel members for this very interesting and interdisciplinary presentation. If I can make a comment before you ask your questions, I want to emphasize that what Álvaro presented is information. We tend to think of information as boring text or zeros and ones, but multimedia information has been around for quite a while. And how we can take best advantage of this type of information for educational purposes is one of the goals of using information technologies to use YouTube or whatever ICT platform to have better access to this wonderful information. This reminds me, of course, of what I mentioned about the aesthetic dimension of biodiversity. You don't need a lot of words to explain why biodiversity is so beautiful and why we should love it, and therefore make some sacrifices to conserve it. So I would like to open the floor for questions. I don't know if we have an additional microphone for those who want to ask a question, or if we should use one of these on the table. Could you help us with the microphone in case? The floor is open for questions. Please, we have about 10 minutes to proceed.